It was a routine journey on one of the UK's busiest railway lines, a high-speed express service heading west from London. However, ahead at a level crossing in a quaint English village, something was out of place that would set in motion a chain of events leading to one of the most devastating train accidents in modern UK history. And the reason it happened was deeply unsettling. This is the story of the Ufton Nervet train crash. At around 5:35 p.m. on the 6th of November 2004, a Great Western Express passenger service departed London's Paddington Station bound for Plymouth. The train consisted of two Class 43 power cars, one at each end, pulling 8 coaches. The locomotive engineer was Stan Martin, a veteran with over 30 years of experience. Taking care of roughly 200 passengers were 3 crew members. After leaving Paddington on time, the train reached Reading around half an hour later, then departed in the dark at around 6:03 p.m. After clearing speed restrictions at Southcote Junction, it began accelerating into the Berkshire countryside towards its 100-mile-per-hour line speed. Meanwhile, 6 miles southwest of Reading, in the small village of Ufton Nervet, an off-duty police officer happened upon a car, a Mazda 323, stationary over the level crossing. Exactly why, he didn't know. But as far as he could see, the car sitting there with its driver inside showed no sign of urgency. Attempting to get the driver's attention, he flashed his headlights and sounded his horn, but the driver appeared to ignore him. Suddenly, at 11 minutes past 6 p.m, the Great Western Express passenger service reached the trigger point and the crossing sequence activated. Warning lights flashed, bells sounded, and the barrier arms lowered around the car. The off-duty officer could do nothing but watch on in horror. At 12 minutes past 6 p.m, the Great Western, moving at around 98 miles per hour, slammed into the Mazda. Instead of hitting the car, pushing it aside, and continuing forward, the impact triggered a sequence of events that completely changed the outcome. The car's engine block lodged beneath the leading axle of the front power car, lifting it up and causing it to derail. The train continued upright for roughly 91 meters before reaching a set of turnout points just beyond the crossing, causing a catastrophic derailment of all vehicles. Behind it, the passenger coaches derailed, some separated, some zigzagged, while one was torn open when it struck a detached wheel assembly. Another folded after striking an embankment. The rear of the train got off lighter, but it still derailed. What had started as a collision with a small hatchback had become a major catastrophe. The small Mazda was destroyed, while a high-speed train lay in ruins scattered across the track. But the question was, why were the car and its occupant so casually parked over the track? In the immediate aftermath of the tragedy, the off-duty police officer immediately called emergency services. Using a torch, he began moving along the track, finding the remains of the car and passengers emerging from the wreckage. Inside the train, conditions were difficult. The derailment had cut power, leaving the coaches in darkness. Passengers used the torches from their mobile phones to navigate, breaking windows and helping each other escape. Emergency services began arriving within minutes. Fire crews, ambulance teams, and police units converged on the scene, eventually involving 180 police officers, 84 firefighters, and 50 ambulance personnel. Rescue efforts continued through the evening, with crews working through damaged coaches, broken glass, and unstable wreckage to reach those inside. When all was said and done, 6 people were dead, the driver of the car, the locomotive engineer, and 4 passengers, while 120 others were injured. A 7th victim, a 9-year-old girl, would die in the hospital later. In the hours and days that followed, investigators from the Thames Valley Police and the British Transport Police pieced together what had happened. The early findings ruled out any track fault, the train showed no mechanical defects, and the level crossing had activated with lights, alarms, and barriers operating as intended. With no indication of failure on the side of the railway, attention turned to the obvious culprit, the car that had been parked across the track. So, obviously, witness accounts would be crucial. The off-duty police officer had seen the vehicle positioned between the barriers moments before the collision. He described the driver as sitting in the car with no apparent urgency, ignoring his headlights and horn. From the wreckage, investigators were able to conclude that the Mazda's engine and headlights had been deliberately switched off. It was becoming obvious to investigators that this was no accident. In the days following the crash, police identified the driver of the vehicle as 48-year-old chef Brian Drysdale. Looking into his background, the police got a clear picture. In the week before the crash, Drysdale had contacted the National Health Service to complain of thoughts of self-harm and told them he believed he was experiencing a mental breakdown. Furthermore, he'd been nervously awaiting the results of an HIV test, fearing he'd contracted the virus years earlier. In fact, on the very day of the tragedy, he had made multiple attempts to contact the clinic handling his HIV test, but it had been closed. It was in this distress that he left work that evening and drove to the level crossing. At the inquest, this information formed a critical part of the conclusion. The jury ultimately found that the crash had been caused by a deliberate act and that those aboard the train had been unlawfully killed. Compensation for the victims was handled separately, with the Motor Insurance Bureau stepping in to cover all personal injury claims, including payments to surviving passengers and the families of those killed after it was found that Drysdale had no valid insurance policy. In the wake of the tragedy, a tribute was created for the train's driver, Stan Martin. The following year, on what would have been his 55th birthday in June 2005, First Great Western named one of its Intercity 125 power cars in his memory, honouring his decades of service and recognising his contribution to the railway. In the years that followed, the dangers of level crossings on high-speed railway lines became increasingly difficult to ignore. Trains were passing through at up to 100 miles per hour, leaving no margin for error, and at Ufton Nervet, that risk was playing out time and time again. The crossing was the site of further fatalities in 2009, 2010, 2012, and 2014, with a near miss in 2011 when a train passed through the crossing at speed with no barriers lowered and no warning lights active. By now, the issue had become impossible to ignore. In 2015, the decision was finally made to remove the crossing and replace it with a road bridge which opened in December of 2016. That's all for today's video. If you found value in it, I'd love it if you subscribed and joined me for the next one. To watch my video on a similar incident in the USA, you can click the link on screen. And as always, thanks for watching.